When your own parents take you to court, you start questioning everything: your childhood, your worth, your sanity. I never imagined I'd end up in a courtroom, facing the people who raised me, fighting for the roof over my head. And I definitely didn't expect the turning point to come from my 7-year-old son. My name's Michael. I'm 36. I'm a teacher, a dad, and, for the past 12 years, the guy who's been holding the family house together while everyone else moved on. Or at least, that's what I told myself. Turns out, they were never really gone. They were just waiting. The house was nothing fancy, not by most people's standards. A 3-bedroom, brick-insiding home in the suburbs. It had a creaky floor in the hallway, a busted screen door we never fixed, and a maple tree in the front yard that turned into a fireball every October. But it was home. It was where I brought my son home from the hospital, where I buried my dog in the backyard, where I sat on the porch with my wife on long, quiet evenings, before the divorce, before everything turned to dust. My parents, Ronald and Diane, moved to Florida back in 2011. They said they were tired of the snow and needed a fresh start. I was 24 at the time, freshly married, newly graduated, and trying to make ends meet with a substitute teaching gig. When they offered to let me stay in the house for as long as I needed, rent-free, I honestly thought it was a gift. They made it sound like a family legacy. Keep it in good shape, my mom had said, brushing my hair back like I was still her little boy. One day, it'll be yours anyway. They didn't give me a lease. No paperwork. Just a verbal promise and a hug on their way out the door. And I believed them. Fast forward to now. I've poured over a decade of my life into that place. Fixed the plumbing, replaced the roof with my own savings, repainted every room by hand. Even turned the basement into a little playroom for my son, Josh. I paid the taxes. I mowed the lawn. I kept it alive. Meanwhile, my younger brother, Adam, golden child, finance guy, always on some new self-help kick, was bouncing between high-rise condos in the city, living fast and burning through jobs. He was the type of guy who posted inspirational quotes with shirtless gym selfies and called them content. We'd never been close, even as kids. I was the quiet one, the sensitive one. He was the loud one, the talker, the performer. It all started last Christmas. We were doing our usual family thing, a week at my parents' place in Naples, Florida. They like everything to be big and dramatic. Matching pajamas, rented boats, catered dinners. Josh had just turned 7, and he was obsessed with sea turtles, so I took him on this little eco-tour thing, just the two of us. While we were gone, Adam apparently made some kind of pitch to our parents. I didn't know it at the time. All I knew was that when I got back, I walked into a very weird conversation. "It's not about deserving it, Adam," my mom was saying, clearly flustered. "But he's just living there," Adam snapped back. "He's not even paying rent. You said it yourself. He's been there long enough." They both stopped talking the second I walked into the room. My mom forced a smile. Adam just smirked like he'd caught me doing something wrong. I remember this tightness in my chest, like I'd missed something important and couldn't rewind to hear it. "Hey," I said slowly. "What's going on?" "Nothing," Mom replied too quickly. "Just talking about your old bedroom. That's all." I didn't believe her. Not for a second. But I let it go. Then things started happening fast. When we got home, there was a letter taped to the front door. From a law firm. It said that the owners of the property were reviewing occupancy and considering a transfer of ownership. I called my mom in a panic. She told me not to read into it, that they were just evaluating options for estate planning. But 2 weeks later, I was served. Served. My own parents were suing me to vacate the house I'd lived in and maintained for 12 years, so they could transfer the deed to a more responsible family member. They didn't even have the courage to say Adam's name in the paperwork. I was stunned. I sat at the kitchen table for hours, just staring at the documents like they were written in another language. Josh was playing with Legos on the carpet. He looked up at me with those big eyes and asked, "Are we moving?" I didn't know how to answer. I still don't. I tried calling my parents again, but they stopped picking up. My mom finally texted back days later saying, "It's best if we handle this through legal channels. This isn't personal." Not personal. I was fighting for the roof over my kid's head. And it wasn't personal? I thought maybe there was still some misunderstanding. So I drove to Adam's apartment. I was angry, yes, but I just wanted to talk. To understand why he would go behind my back like this. Maybe he needed help. Maybe he thought the house was vacant half the year and he deserved a shot. Maybe there was something I didn't know. But when he opened the door, He didn't even pretend to be surprised. Well, he said, folding his arms. Took you long enough. What is this, Adam? I asked, holding up the envelope. It's what should have happened years ago, he said, without missing a beat. You got to play house in the suburbs for over a decade while I was grinding in the city. You think that's fair? You didn't want the house, I said. You left. You've never lifted a finger for it. I paid the property tax out of my own bank account. He rolled his eyes. You're acting like you own it. You don't, Mike. Mom and Dad do. You're just squatting. That word, squatting, made something snap in me. I felt this heat crawl up my neck. Squatting? Are you serious? I raised my son here. I buried our dog in that backyard. I fixed everything you all ignored. And I'm the one who convinced them to finally cash in, Adam said. You really think they were going to let you have it forever? I stood there stunned. I couldn't decide if I wanted to punch him or cry. Maybe both. You're unbelievable, I whispered. You already make 6 figures. Why do you need the house too? Because I can, he said with a shrug. And because you never learned how to play the game. That was the moment I realized this wasn't about need. This was about power. Adam wanted to win. He wanted to prove he was the better son, the more successful one. And he was using our parents to do it. That night, I sat in the living room, the lights dim, Josh asleep upstairs, and I just felt this heavy, suffocating silence. I didn't know what to do. I'd never fought a legal battle in my life. I was a high school English teacher with a modest salary and a broken heart. And now I was being dragged into court by the very people who once rocked me to sleep. I considered just leaving, packing up, finding a rental somewhere, starting over. But every time I looked at the crayon drawings on the fridge or the dent in the banister where Josh crashed his scooter, I knew I couldn't walk away. Not like this. They wanted a war. Then fine. But they had no idea what they'd started. And they had no idea what my son had saved without me ever knowing. I wish I could say the worst of it ended there, that the shock wore off and I settled into some calm, focused battle plan. But that's not how this kind of betrayal works. It doesn't hit you like a wave. It seeps in, slow and acidic, corroding every memory, every assumption you thought was safe. For weeks after I got served, I kept expecting my phone to buzz with a message from my mom saying, "This has gone too far," or "We didn't mean for it to come to this." But all I got was silence. No, that's not true. I got one message from her. It came about 5 days after I visited Adam. Just a single text. "Michael, please don't make this harder than it needs to be. We still love you." Love? That word nearly made me laugh out loud. You don't evict someone you love without so much as a conversation. You don't pit one son against the other and then act like you're the victim. But even then, even as the anger built up in my chest, I still held on to some kind of desperate hope. I thought maybe this was all some warped misunderstanding. Maybe Adam had convinced them I was secretly renting the house out on Airbnb or letting it fall into disrepair. So I called my aunt, my mom's younger sister, Rachel, someone I trusted, someone who had always been more grounded than the rest of them. She picked up right away. "Michael," she said, her voice soft but careful. "I've been waiting for you to call." That was the first time I realized she already knew. She sighed before I could say a word and said, "I didn't want to get in the middle of it, but I told your mom this wasn't right." I sank into the couch, my free hand covering my face. "So it's not a misunderstanding? They really want to hand the house over to Adam?" "I don't think it was their idea at first," she said slowly. "Adam's been planting seeds for a long time, telling them you were freeloading, that you were never going to move out, that he could flip the house and reinvest it." I blinked. Flip the house? She hesitated. He told them he could turn it into a luxury rental. Said the neighborhood's values were going up, and they'd be fools not to cash in before the market cools. It was like hearing someone talk about my home like it was just a set of numbers on a spreadsheet. A unit to be optimized. My blood boiled. Did they believe him? There was another long pause. Then, "Your dad thinks Adam knows more about business. Your mom? She's tired, Michael. She doesn't want drama. She thinks if you just go peacefully, everything will be fine." Go peacefully. Like I was some squatter in a standoff. I thanked Rachel and hung up, but I couldn't sleep that night. I kept pacing through the house, looking at every dent, every chipped corner, every paint color I'd chosen with my ex-wife when we were still pretending things were fine. It wasn't just a house. It was years of my life. It was memories. It was the one stable thing I had left after the divorce, after my ex moved halfway across the country and left me to raise Josh alone. And now even that was being taken from me. The next blow came a week later. I got a call from the school district. My principal, who's usually chipper and cracking jokes about her cats, sounded stiff. "Hey, Michael. Just wanted to give you a heads up." "About what?" She hesitated. "We got a letter from a law firm requesting employment verification, and it had a note attached. A question about whether you've ever used your school credentials to register public services under a false address." I felt like the air had been punched out of me. "What? I've never. What does that even mean?" She lowered her voice. "I don't know what's going on, but it looked personal. They said it's part of a property dispute. Are you okay?" I assured her I was. But I wasn't. Not even close. That was when I realized Adam wasn't just trying to win the case. He was trying to burn my credibility. He was hoping I'd crack, get fired, or lose custody of Josh. I'd never done anything close to what they were implying, but in a court battle, even the suggestion can taint you. Suddenly, I was reading every form I'd ever filled out, every school directory I'd signed, wondering if I had made some mistake years ago they'd now twist into a weapon. I started documenting everything. Every conversation, every repair I'd done on the house, every bank statement showing I'd paid utilities and taxes. I found receipts from Home Depot going back to 2012. I printed emails from the city about a tree removal I'd handled when a branch fell during a storm. I wasn't going down without a fight. But the hardest part wasn't the legal prep. It was Josh. He could tell something was wrong. He's always been sensitive that way, observant. One night, while I was sorting papers in the dining room, he wandered in and asked, "Are we moving soon?" I looked up, startled. "Why would you ask that, buddy?" He shrugged, but his voice was small. "I heard you say court. That's where people go when someone's in trouble." I walked over, knelt beside him. "No one's in trouble. We're just working through something. But this is still your home." "Okay." He nodded, but I could tell he didn't believe me. A few days later, I got an invitation to a family brunch. From my mother. It was almost surreal. A printed card in an envelope with floral designs and a line that said, "Let's reconnect and talk. Just us." I almost didn't go, but I was desperate. Maybe she was coming to her senses. I left Josh with a friend and drove across town to the brunch spot. One of those upscale garden cafes where everything costs twice as much as it should and comes served on a slate instead of a plate. My mom was already there, sipping a mimosa. She stood and gave me a hug that felt more like a formality. "I'm glad you came," she said. "Are you?" I asked quietly. She sighed and sat back down. "Michael, this doesn't have to be ugly. We can resolve this without all the drama." "You mean me giving up and moving out?" I said flatly. She winced. "It's not about sides. Your father and I just want what's best for the family." I stared at her. "You think giving the house to Adam is what's best?" "He has plans," she said quickly. "He wants to renovate, maybe even live there eventually." You're not exactly going anywhere, Michael." That line hit me harder than I expected. "What does that mean?" She looked away. "You've been stuck since the divorce. You teach, you parent, but there's no growth, no ambition. Maybe this push will help you find something new." I sat there in stunned silence. She wasn't just trying to take my home. She genuinely thought it would be good for me. "Did Adam tell you to say that?" I asked quietly. She blinked. "Excuse me. Did he write this whole brunch script for you? Did he coach you on how to make it sound like love while you stabbed me in the back?" Her mouth dropped open. "Michael, how dare you?" "No," I said, standing up. "How dare you? You told me to take care of that house. You said it would be mine. And now, because your golden child suddenly wants a rental property, I'm being treated like a parasite." "Watch your tone," she snapped, the mask slipping. I leaned in. "You watch your son, Mom. Because he's making enemies faster than you realize." I walked out before she could say another word. That night, Josh climbed into bed with me after a nightmare. He didn't say much, just curled up next to me like he used to when he was smaller. I stared at the ceiling, rage and heartbreak battling in my chest. I knew then, this wouldn't end with a peaceful talk. It was war now. A few weeks later, I got the official court date. And something strange happened. Josh started acting secretive. He'd vanish into his room with his tablet, headphones on, whispering to himself. I assumed he was playing a game or watching one of those endless YouTube videos about Minecraft, but one night I peeked in and saw him recording something, some kind of audio project. When he noticed me, he quickly turned it off. "What are you doing, buddy?" He shrugged. "Just something for school." I didn't press. My mind was elsewhere. Court was coming. The tension was rising. Adam had hired a team of attorneys. I had a lawyer I found through a friend, someone decent but not flashy. We prepped every night, going over documents, strategies, worst-case scenarios. And the worst part? My parents hadn't relented. Not once. In fact, they doubled down. My dad sent me a letter through his attorney accusing me of diminishing the property's value by turning the garage into a temporary office. My mom submitted a sworn affidavit claiming I had never received verbal promise of ownership. They both sat on the other side of that courtroom like strangers when the day finally came. But I didn't break. Because in the middle of the trial, just when everything seemed stacked against me, something happened. Josh, my quiet, thoughtful 7-year-old son, raised his hand and asked the judge if he could say something. And when the judge allowed it, Josh said, "Can I show the judge something my dad's never seen?" He pulled out his tablet, and what he played changed everything. I didn't even know Josh had been recording anything. He stood there, 7 years old, small in that giant courtroom, clutching his scratched-up tablet with the cracked corner. His voice trembled just a little when he said, "Can I show the judge something my dad's never seen?" I remember the judge, a woman named Honorable Judith Warren, looking over her glasses and gently nodding. "You may, young man, if it's relevant." Josh's thumb hovered over the play button for a second, like he was thinking through the weight of what he was about to do. Then he tapped it. At first, there was nothing, just static and background noise, the faint hum of a dishwasher, maybe. Then came voices, muffled, but clear enough. Adam's voice. "So when he's out, we send the contractors in. I already have a guy lined up to start demo. He can get the kitchen in a weekend." My spine straightened. The courtroom went silent. The judge raised an eyebrow. "Where was this recorded?" Josh looked at me, nervous now. "At Christmas, when we went to Florida. I was hiding under the patio table with my tablet because I was bored. I didn't mean to record it. It just happened." The audio continued, clearer now. My mom's voice. "Tired. I still feel bad about it, Adam. He's lived there so long. I don't want to hurt him." "You're not hurting him," Adam said sharply. "You're setting boundaries. He's been playing the victim since the divorce. You want him in that house forever? Being pitted by everyone. I just don't want this to come back on us legally." "It won't," Adam said confidently. "Trust me. I've already talked to the lawyer. We get the court to evict him, transfer the deed, and then we list. He doesn't have the money to fight us." Silence again. Then my dad, sounding distant. "Let's just be careful. He's not stupid." Adam laughed. "He's an English teacher with a sad divorce and a soft kid. He won't fight. He folds. He always has." There was a gasp in the courtroom. I couldn't even tell who it came from. Josh quickly turned off the tablet. "That's all." The judge was stone still. She turned to me. "Mr. Bennett, did you have knowledge of this conversation?" I couldn't speak. I shook my head slowly. My throat was dry, and I was gripping the edge of the table so hard my knuckles had turned white. My lawyer stood. "We'd like to enter this into evidence, Your Honor." Everything changed after that, but it didn't get easier. Court recessed for the day shortly after Josh's testimony. The judge needed time to review the recording, and the opposing counsel scrambled to issue objections, question the context, argue its legality, all of which our lawyer calmly countered. Josh had recorded it in a one-party consent state. It was admissible. Still, what hit me hardest wasn't the legal impact. It was hearing their voices like that. My family, plotting behind my back, talking about me like I was a burden, a loser, a roadblock. I knew Adam didn't respect me. That was old news. But hearing my mother, say she felt bad, while still going along with it, that destroyed something in me I didn't even know could break. I didn't go home right away. I took Josh out for ice cream, even though neither of us really had the appetite for it. He was quiet, sitting on the bench outside the shop, his feet swinging just above the pavement. "Was that okay?" he asked me, not looking up from his cone. "That I showed them?" I blinked, struggling to keep it together. I pulled him close. "Josh, you were brave. So brave. I didn't know you were keeping that." He looked down. "I thought you'd be mad." "Mad? Why would I be mad?" He bit his lip. "You always say not to spy, and not to listen to grown-up talk. That's not for me." I gave a broken laugh. "Yeah, I do say that." He looked up at me, serious now. "But they were being mean. To you. I didn't want them to win." I felt tears sting my eyes. I hadn't cried in years. Not when my ex left. Not when I found out about the lawsuit. But right there, on that bench, I broke a little. We sat there for a long time. When I finally dropped him off at school the next day and returned home, something felt off. At first, I couldn't place it. But as I pulled into the driveway, I saw that the side gate was unlatched. That gate had a sticky lock. I always had to jiggle it twice. I knew I'd closed it the night before. Inside, the smell hit me first. Fresh paint. Chemical. Like primer. I walked through the house slowly, cautiously. That's when I saw it. The kitchen cabinets, half-painted. Tools scattered on the counter. A new sink, still in its box, leaned against the wall. Dust everywhere. I wasn't imagining it. Someone had started demo. I grabbed my phone and checked the security app. I'd never installed a camera inside the house. Only outside, facing the front porch and driveway. But the app showed something chilling. Two men, clearly visible, entering the side yard at 6:42 a.m. A white van behind them. They wore contractor uniforms. One of them had a clipboard. I called the number listed on the van's side, a local home improvement company. When I asked who ordered the work at my address, the receptionist paused. Let me check. 2 minutes later, she returned. Yes, that would be Mr. Adam Bennett. He confirmed this work ordered 2 weeks ago. We were told it was a vacant property under remodel. I hung up without another word. That was the moment the line was crossed. The moment I knew Adam wasn't just trying to win. He was actively violating the law, acting as if he already owned the house. He sent contractors into my home, while my son and I were asleep. I called the police. The officers came quickly. They confirmed the work order and spoke to the workers, who had already left by the time they arrived. But without clear proof of trespassing intent, it was hard to press charges. Still, they filed a report and advised me to change the locks and install interior cameras. I followed their advice that same day. I also called my lawyer. This isn't just a civil matter anymore, I said. This is criminal trespass. He's trying to force me out by making the house unlivable. My lawyer agreed. We added it to the list of evidence for the next court session. But that night, something inside me collapsed. I sat in Josh's room while he slept and just stared at the walls. The posters. The glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling. The tiny bookshelf where his favorite dinosaur books lived. I imagined him walking in from school one day to find strangers tearing apart our kitchen. Or worse, walking in on them. I felt powerless. Violated. Then, I got a text. From Adam. You're dragging this out longer than you need to. Everyone knows you're not winning. Why not make this easy on the kid? No greeting. No signature. Just that. And something about the wording. The kid, like Josh wasn't even a person, just a pawn, made me snap. I wrote back. If you ever send anyone into my house again, I will press charges and file for a restraining order. You crossed a line. He responded a minute later. You don't get it. This isn't about you. It's about them. They're not giving it to you, Mike. Wake up. He was right about one thing. It wasn't just him anymore. The next day, I received a letter from my parents' lawyer. It accused me of sabotaging ongoing renovations and tampering with contractor access. It warned that if I interfered again, they would seek damages. They were blaming me for stopping the unauthorized work in my own home. I called my mother. She didn't answer. I called my father. Straight to voicemail. I even emailed them both, attaching photos of the mess left behind and the police report. No response. And then, another betrayal. Josh's school. I was pulled into a meeting with the principal, school counselor, and, to my surprise, a representative from Child Protective Services. Apparently, someone had submitted an anonymous tip alleging that Josh was living in unsafe housing conditions and exposed to legal conflict without protection. I was livid. The social worker was kind. She could tell the situation was retaliatory, but she still had to follow protocol. She visited our home, inspected each room, took notes, asked questions. When she left, she patted my shoulder and said, I believe you. But this kind of thing, it happens more than you'd think. People weaponize the system when they want control. I thanked her, but I felt numb. That night, Josh asked if we were still safe, if someone was going to take him away. I held him tight and said, no, no one is taking you anywhere. This is our home, and we're going to fight for it. But deep down, I was breaking. I'd been betrayed by the people who were supposed to love me. Lied to, manipulated, humiliated. And now they were trying to take my son away, or at least scare me into thinking they could. That's when I stopped hoping they'd see reason. That's when I started planning revenge. The day after the court recording played, I woke up with a strange mix of hope and dread. Hope, because Josh's recording had blown open the truth. The judge saw it. The lawyers heard it. Even the gallery, packed with quiet, observant strangers, had gasped when Adam's voice crackled through the tablet. But dread because, deep down, I knew Adam wouldn't go quietly. Not after being exposed. And he didn't. If anything, the betrayal that followed was colder, more calculating, and far more personal. It started subtly. The first real blow came 3 days later when I opened my bank app and saw a $0 balance in my checking account. My stomach dropped. I'd had over $2,000 in there. Not much, but enough to get through the week. Panicked, I called the bank. After being bounced around between departments, I finally landed on a fraud rep who told me, with robotic calm, there was a hold placed on your account due to a flagged identity verification discrepancy. What does that mean? I asked, pacing my living room. It appears someone submitted a form stating your identity was compromised. Your social security number was attached to a different address. We're required to freeze the funds pending verification. What address? I asked sharply. She hesitated. We're not allowed to disclose that until the investigation concludes. You'll receive a letter in the mail with the case details. I didn't need the letter. I knew what address they had used. Adam had taken it a step further, from false accusations about the house to now interfering with my livelihood. For 2 weeks, I had to operate without access to my own money. I borrowed a bit from my friend Mark to cover groceries and gas. Every swipe of my debit card felt like a gamble. Josh noticed the tension. I tried to shield him from it, but kids pick up on more than we realize. Why don't we go out for pizza like we used to? He asked one night. I lied. Because I'm saving up for something special. I didn't tell him that the something special was trying not to lose our home. And then came the knock at the door. It was a Saturday morning. Josh was watching cartoons on the couch, wrapped in a dinosaur blanket, when someone banged on the front door, hard. 3 uniformed men stood outside. A fourth one, in a suit, stepped forward when I opened it. Mr. Bennett? Yes. We're with the County Housing Board. We've received a formal complaint about squatters in this residence. We're here to inspect the property. I blinked. Squatters? I live here. The man in the suit pulled out a folder. The owners of record have filed a claim stating this property has been unlawfully occupied for over a year. They submitted photographic evidence of structural neglect and cited health hazards. I nearly laughed. Structural? Look, this is a mistake. I'm in the middle of a court dispute with my brother. He's trying to claim the house. He's making this all up. But they were already writing things down, peeking past me into the house. Sir, you can explain this to the inspector. We'll need to walk through the property. They walked into my home like I didn't exist. One of them even opened the fridge, checking expiration dates. Another went into the backyard, taking photos of the deck. After 30 minutes, they left. One handed me a yellow slip, pending review for housing code violation. They were threatening to condemn the property. That night, after putting Josh to bed, I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the wall. The same wall I had repainted 6 years ago, after a pipe burst, and I had to re-drywall the entire section by myself. I remembered scraping away mold, installing new insulation, driving to Home Depot twice in one day because I bought the wrong nails. And now, that wall was apparently part of a hazardous dwelling. Adam wasn't just fighting dirty. He was erasing me, erasing everything I'd built. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. I stopped responding to most texts, even from friends who meant well. I withdrew from staff lunches at school, stopped showing up to the Thursday trivia nights at the bar down the street. The walls of the house began to feel closer, heavier. I started to question whether I was losing. Not just the legal case, but me. The quiet, stable, dependable person I used to be. I was unraveling. The only thing keeping me anchored was Josh. Even in the middle of chaos, he somehow stayed bright. Innocent. He built Lego castles on the floor like our whole world wasn't on fire. And sometimes, when I was sure he wasn't watching, I'd just look at him and think, I can't fall apart. Not yet. One evening, I found him sitting at my desk, scribbling something in a spiral notebook. When I asked what he was doing, he flipped it shut quickly and grinned. It's a secret project, he said. You'll see. I smiled. It was the first time I'd done that in days. But behind the smile, I was unraveling. I was hitting rock bottom. And then, I got a phone call. It was from Rachel, my aunt, my mother's sister. The one who'd warned me early on. Michael, she said gently. I didn't want to call, but I have to tell you something. My heart dropped. What? I had lunch with your mom today. I held my breath. She told me she and your father are preparing to sign over power of attorney to Adam. I stood, knocking over a chair. What? She said he convinced them it was easier that way. Said he'd handle everything. The house, the finances, even their medical directives. Michael, this isn't just about the house anymore. I couldn't believe it. Adam was consolidating control. He wasn't just coming for my home. He was coming for them. For everything. And they were letting him. Rachel lowered her voice. I don't know what he promised them, but he's been manipulating them for years. Your dad thinks he's some kind of financial genius. Your mom just wants to keep the peace. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. My hands were shaking. Listen, she said. I'll help how I can. But if they sign over power of attorney, Adam can make real decisions on their behalf. You need to stop him before that happens. I thanked her, hung up, and just sat there. I wasn't just in a legal battle anymore. I was in a war for my family's future, even the ones betraying me. That night, after putting Josh to sleep, I opened a Google Doc. I titled it, The Plan, and I started writing. Not a revenge plot. Not yet. Not exactly. But something was taking shape. A quiet, patient blueprint. If Adam wanted to win by force, I would beat him with patience. With evidence. With restraint. I had something he didn't. Discipline. And community. I started making lists. Every repair I'd done on the house. Every bill I'd paid. Every contractor I'd hired. Witnesses who had seen me living there. Photos of Josh growing up in that house. Birthday parties, first steps, Christmas mornings. I called an old friend of mine, Ben, who worked as a paralegal years ago before opening a small investigative service. We met over coffee. I told him everything. Ben leaned back in his chair and said, You know, if your brother has any skeletons in his closet, now's the time to start rattling them. I didn't want to go there at first, but Ben was right. I couldn't afford to fight fair while Adam burned every bridge. He handed me a card. You didn't hear this from me, but this guy knows how to pull credit history, property investments, even off-the-books leases. It felt wrong. Spying. Digging. But then I remembered the contractors in my home. The bank account freeze. The CPS report. The attempt to take my son away. All bets were off. I would rise from rock bottom. Not with rage, but with strategy. With silence. With a long, slow knife. It's funny how rock bottom gives you clarity. I used to think clarity would come from calm, from meditation or long walks or whatever nonsense Adam posted in his shirtless Instagram monologues. But for me, it came from sitting in the dark at 2 a.m. after months of betrayal, staring at a cracked kitchen tile I couldn't afford to replace, and thinking, I've got nothing left to lose. That's when I stopped reacting and started building. I called out sick from work for 3 days. Not because I was unwell, but because I needed time to get strategic. This wasn't a legal case anymore. It was a power struggle, and I was done being the one at the mercy of everyone else's decisions. Step 1. Get smart. Ben, my old paralegal friend, connected me with a man named Troy. He was ex-military, ex-private investigator, and exactly the kind of guy you'd want on your side when someone's trying to erase your life one forged document at a time. Troy wasn't cheap, but he agreed to a payment plan after I explained everything. He listened to me without judgment. Just nodded, occasionally jotting things down. So, he said after an hour, you want me to find dirt on your brother? I want to know what he's hiding, I said. Because a guy like Adam, someone who plays as dirty as he does, doesn't get through life spotless. Troy smirked. They never do. By the end of that week, Troy had already discovered that Adam owned 2 LLCs registered under different names. One in Delaware, one in Nevada. Both were tied to rental properties in rough shape. One had been sued last year for mold-related health violations. The other had been quietly bought through a cash deal that raised some red flags with local housing inspectors. He also found social media messages, cached posts, and screenshots that Adam had deleted, mocking tenants and bragging about renting dumps to desperate families. I didn't even know where to begin with that. I'm going to print all of this, I told my lawyer. Let's bring it to court. But she shook her head. Not yet. Let's wait until the next hearing. Hit them all at once. She was right. Step 2. Go on the offensive. I filed a restraining order against Adam for the unauthorized contractor intrusion. It wasn't a guaranteed win, but the fact that he'd let strangers into a residence with a child inside gave us leverage. The housing code violation threat? That backfired. After the inspector returned and saw my documentation, He not only withdrew the violation, he made a formal note in the county records that the original complaint had lacked sufficient evidence and appeared retaliatory. Even better, I got a letter in the mail a week later from CPS. The complaint had been unsubstantiated. The case was closed. I'd kept my composure during their visit. I had been kind, cooperative. Josh had told them, in his sweet, earnest voice, "My dad always makes sure I'm safe." That was what did it. I framed that letter. Step 3. Tell the story. Up until now, I'd kept quiet on social media. I wasn't the kind of guy to air family drama online. But Adam had painted me as a squatter. He'd told people I was taking advantage of my parents. So I posted a simple, public message on Facebook. Just the facts. For those who've asked, yes, I'm in the middle of a legal battle. My parents are attempting to evict me from the home I've lived in, raised my son in, and maintained for over a decade. My brother, who has never lived in this house or paid a single bill toward it, is trying to claim it as a financial asset. I've kept quiet out of respect for my family. But silence only helps abusers. I'm fighting this, not just for me, but for Josh. Thank you to everyone who's reached out. The post went semi-viral, at least within our small town. Former neighbors commented. My old high school teacher. Even a few of my dad's old co-workers. The general sentiment was clear. I remember when you painted that porch yourself. Your kid plays with mine. This is awful. Your brother's a snake, man. Sorry you're dealing with this. It wasn't a legal win, but it was a narrative win. And narrative, I was learning, was everything. Step 4. Make it hurt. While Adam had been busy trashing my name and buying off contractors, he hadn't been watching his own backyard. Troy sent me photos of one of Adam's rental properties, the one tied to his Nevada LLC. The roof was caved in. Multiple code violations. A fire hazard. Worse, one of the tenants had filed a complaint, and Adam had never responded. That tenant, a single mom named Keisha, had been threatened with eviction when she complained about black mold in her bathroom. Troy found her and got her to agree to a signed statement. That was my ace in the hole. I'd wait until court to use it. And in the meantime, I rebuilt. I didn't mean just the legal case. I mean me. I started sleeping again. I reconnected with friends. I began waking up early to journal, something my therapist had recommended during my divorce, but I'd never truly committed to. Josh noticed the change too. You're not sad anymore, he said one morning while eating cereal. I was never sad, I said with a smile. Just a little tired. He nodded like he understood. You're like a superhero who had a charge. He wasn't wrong. I also started fixing the house again, not because I thought it would sway the court, but because it was mine. I routed the tiles. I sanded and repainted the banister. I finally cleaned out the garage, something I'd put off for years, and turned it into a small workspace. Josh and I started building things together on weekends. Birdhouses, Lego contraptions, little woodworking projects. And every night, I added more to my Google Doc. Timelines, receipts, quotes from neighbors, screenshots, letters of support. I even got a notarized statement from the guy who'd sold me the HVAC unit 5 years ago, confirming it had been paid for in full by me. I was rebuilding my case from the inside out. And as I did, my confidence grew. One day, out of the blue, I got a text from my mother. Michael, can we talk? Please. I didn't answer right away. In fact, I let it sit there for 2 days. Then I responded. Only if Adam's not involved. No more group ambushes. She replied immediately. Just me. Tomorrow. Lunch. Part of me wanted to say no. But curiosity won. We met at a park. Not a restaurant. Neutral ground. She looked older than I remembered. Tired. Fragile. Maybe it was the stress. Maybe it was guilt. But when she saw me, she smiled. I miss you, she said softly. I didn't reply. She sat down on the bench. Your father and I, we didn't expect it to get this far. I let out a quiet laugh. You hired a lawyer and filed for eviction. That's not something that just happens. She looked at her hands. Adam said we had to. He said if we didn't act fast, you'd claim squatters' rights and take the house away from us. I stared at her. Do you hear how insane that sounds? You think I'd steal from you? She looked up at me, tears in her eyes. No, I don't. I didn't know what to believe anymore. You believed him, I said. You always have. She nodded slowly. We made a mistake. We sat in silence. Then she said something that caught me completely off guard. I'm thinking of rescinding the power of attorney. I turned to her. What? I haven't signed anything yet. But Adam's been pushing. Too hard. And after that recording Josh played, I see it now. He doesn't want to help us. He wants control. I leaned back on the bench. Finally, a crack in their armor. Then don't sign it, I said. It's not too late. She nodded. I'll talk to your father. But I wasn't relying on her anymore. If she did the right thing, great. If not, I was still winning. Because the final hearing was approaching. The judge had scheduled it as a multi-day proceeding to wrap everything up. And my lawyer and I were ready. The new plan? Show every receipt. Present every signed statement. Expose Adam's sketchy property dealings. Then, and only then, bring in Keisha's testimony. And if things went well, maybe, just maybe, end it with something no one expected. Because Troy had found something else. Something I hadn't told my lawyer yet. Something that could shatter Adam's credibility in one blow. But that would wait for the final day. Because now, for the first time in months, I wasn't afraid of the courtroom. I owned it. The courthouse had stopped feeling like a threat. It felt more like a stage now, and I was finally ready to perform. After months of lies, betrayals, secret recordings, and weaponized legal filings, the final hearing was just a week away. But this time, I wasn't scared. Not because I thought I had it all figured out. Trust me, I still woke up at 3 a.m. some nights panicking about losing the house. But because I finally had leverage. And I knew how to use it. The courtroom is where truth gets wrapped in strategy. Adam had been throwing punches in the dark for months, hoping something would stick. But now I had structure, evidence, a narrative, and more importantly, I had time working in my favor. Because the longer this dragged out, the more his own arrogance began to expose him. It started with a phone call. Troy, my PI, rang me on a Thursday afternoon. I was in my classroom, cleaning whiteboard markers off my hands, when my phone buzzed. You got a second? He asked. For you? Always. He didn't waste time. I found a bank statement that might interest you, he said. Not Adam's, but your parents'. It's public because they signed a shared mortgage in Nevada years ago, and there's a lien filed against it for non-payment. I blinked. Wait, my parents are in debt. More than you think. That second home Adam talked them into buying, the investment condo in Henderson, it's underwater. And Adam convinced them to take out a reverse mortgage to cover the difference. I felt my stomach twist. Are you serious? They're up to their necks, Michael. And guess who the loan officer was? I didn't answer. I already knew. Adam, Troy confirmed. Through a shell financial advisory firm he opened 2 years ago. That was the moment everything clicked. This wasn't just about me. This wasn't just about the house. Adam was trying to liquidate everything, my parents included. He'd positioned himself as their financial savior, convinced them to sign over power of attorney, though they hadn't yet, and now he was maneuvering their assets like chess pieces. The house I lived in wasn't the prize. It was just the first domino. If I left quietly, he'd flip it, sell their condo, consolidate control of their accounts, and then what? I could see the end game now. He was planning to drain them dry. And I wasn't going to let that happen. Not to me, and not to them. Even after everything they'd done. I asked Troy for every document he could dig up. Bank transfers, legal filings, even Adam's promotional materials for his so-called financial firm. Within 2 days, I had a fat folder of evidence and a 12-slide presentation my lawyer helped me prep for the final hearing. But even with that locked and loaded, I wanted more. Something devastating. Something personal. Then, as if the universe decided to give me an early Christmas gift, I got a call from Keisha, the tenant from Adam's Nevada property. I've been thinking about our conversation, she said, and I want to help. You already signed a statement, I told her. That was brave. No, she said. I want to testify. In person. If you'll let me. I was stunned. You do that. I want people to see what kind of man he really is, she said. He threatened to evict me when I told him there was mold. He wouldn't fix the leak, wouldn't return my messages. My daughter got sick, Michael. I didn't know why at first, but the doctor found it. Black mold spores in her lungs. I had to break the lease just to get out. I can't afford a lawyer. But I can stand in front of a judge. That was when I knew. This wasn't just a revenge arc anymore. It was justice. My lawyer filed a motion to allow Keisha to testify. Since her experience directly pertained to Adam's pattern of property mismanagement, and since he was vying for ownership of a property with a minor in it, the judge approved it. Adam didn't see it coming. He thought this would be a 3-day affair of dry paperwork and witness statements. He thought he'd lean on my parents' testimony and ride the wave of bloodline loyalty. But he'd underestimated the quiet fire of someone who'd been cornered for too long. The more you push a man like me, the more dangerous he becomes. Then something unexpected happened. My father called. Not my mom. Not Rachel. My dad. I hadn't spoken to him directly in over 2 months. "Michael," he said stiffly. "We need to talk." I stayed silent. Let him sit in it. "Your mother told me about your concerns. About the reverse mortgage. About Adam." I waited. "You should have come to me earlier," he said. I let out a small laugh. "Like the last time I called. And you let it go to voicemail?" He sighed. "I didn't know all the details. But we've had second thoughts." "About the power of attorney?" "Yes," he said. "And about the house." I didn't jump. I didn't get hopeful. I just listened. "I think we need to go over some things," he said. Face to face. We met the next evening at a small diner near their retirement community. He looked tired. Older than I remembered. Like whatever illusion of Adam being their savior had finally cracked. He came in with a manila envelope and slid it across the table. I opened it. Inside were copies of the reverse mortgage, a list of loans Adam had encouraged them to take, and, at the bottom, a new notarized statement revoking the pending power of attorney transfer. "I don't know what game Adam's playing," my dad said, "but I'm starting to realize he doesn't care who he burns." You were right. I stayed quiet for a long time. Then I said, "I'm still going to court." He nodded. "I know. And I'm still fighting for the house." He hesitated, then said, "Maybe it's time it belonged to someone who actually treated it like home." It wasn't an apology. Not exactly. But it was close. The final piece of the setup came 3 days later. Troy called again. "I've got it," he said. "Got what?" "Something your brother never wanted you to find." Apparently, Adam had once used my parents' address, my house's address, as a proof of residency for a business application back in 2018. But not just any business. One tied to a government pandemic relief grant during COVID. He claimed the property was a low-income rental unit. Filed for funds. Got approved. But here's the kicker. The grant terms required the applicant to own the property outright. And at that time, my parents still held the deed, which meant Adam had committed fraud. On a federal form, Troy got the application. It had Adam's signature, the fake rental agreement, and even a fake tenant name, James A., with a blurry lease document listing rent at $1,200 per month. It was all falsified. We didn't go to the authorities, not yet. Instead, my lawyer included it in a sealed envelope to the judge, labeled Exhibit D, Supplemental Evidence, Rebuttal to Claim of Responsible Ownership. The trap was set. The revenge wasn't loud. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't even about vengeance anymore. It was about proving, publicly and irrevocably, that Adam wasn't fit to own a backyard swing set, let alone a house with a child in it. And it was about proving, finally, that I wasn't the problem. That I was the only one holding everything together while everyone else was playing games. The hearing was scheduled for Monday. 3 days. And for once, I was ready. Not just ready to defend. Ready to win. Courtroom 2B was packed on Monday morning. Not with a huge audience. Just the usual people. A couple legal clerks, a few curious attorneys waiting on their cases, my parents sitting stiffly in the second row, and Adam, smug in a navy blue blazer that probably cost more than my monthly rent. But still, it felt like the walls themselves were holding their breath. This was the day it would all unfold. I showed up early, wearing the same suit I'd worn to my wedding 12 years ago. It still fit, barely. I figured that was symbolic, something old, something from when I believed in family, now repurposed to protect what little I had left of it. Josh wasn't there. I left him with Rachel for the day. He'd already done his part, braver than most adults ever could be. He didn't need to see the final act. This was mine. My lawyer, Vanessa, looked like she hadn't slept, but she was all sharp lines and calm focus. She patted my shoulder as I sat beside her. Ready, as I'll ever be. The judge entered, Honorable Judith Warren, and immediately cut through the noise like a scalpel. "Let's proceed," she said. "Today we will hear the final arguments and witness testimony regarding Bennett versus Bennett regarding the ownership and occupancy of the property located at 417 West Maple Avenue." Adam's lawyer started with the same tired speech he'd rehearsed for weeks. "Your Honor, this property has remained legally in the name of Ronald and Diane Bennett. Our client, Adam Bennett, has been granted written authorization by the owners to act on their behalf. Mr. Michael Bennett, while residing at the property, has made no formal arrangements for ownership, rent, or title transfer. He is, by all legal definitions, a tenant at will. Vanessa didn't flinch. She didn't even take notes. She'd heard it all before. So had I. Then it was our turn. She stood. Your Honor, we intend to demonstrate not only that Mr. Michael Bennett has a legitimate claim to equitable interest in the property due to years of consistent investment, occupancy, and care, but also that the plaintiff, Adam Bennett, has acted in bad faith, used manipulative tactics to gain control, and is fundamentally unfit to take ownership of the property in question. The judge raised an eyebrow. You'll have to back that with more than sentiment, counsel. Vanessa smiled. We intend to. The first hour was foundational. Vanessa laid out the receipts, taxes paid, utilities, structural repairs, all from my accounts. Photos of birthday parties, Halloween decorations, even Josh's first steps taken in that same living room. She highlighted that my parents had never collected rent, never asked for it, and never treated the home as anything but Michael's responsibility, even in their own emails. Then came the neighbors, 2 of them. One testified they hadn't seen my parents in years. The other spoke about watching me shovel that driveway every single storm for over a decade, never missing a beat. That's his house, she said. Anyone can see that. But it was Keisha's testimony that changed everything. When she walked in, early 30s, nervous but composed, Adam visibly flinched. His jaw tightened. His lawyer turned and whispered something. She took the stand. Miss Jefferson, Vanessa began. Can you explain how you know Mr. Adam Bennett? I rented a property from him last year, she said. He listed it through a company called Redwood Urban Holdings. I found it online. And what was your experience? Her voice wavered, but she held firm. There was black mold. In the bathroom, under the sink, spreading into the hallway. My daughter started having breathing problems. I sent pictures, left messages. He didn't respond for 3 weeks. When I finally got through, he told me to find somewhere else if I didn't like it. Gasps rippled through the gallery. Did he ever resolve the issue? No, she said. I had to break the lease. He kept my deposit. Vanessa let the silence sit. Then she said, Your Honor, we have documentation, dated photos, medical reports, and a signed rental agreement, showing that this incident took place under one of Mr. Bennett's business entities. Adam's lawyer stood. Irrelevant. This has no bearing on the Maple Avenue property. But Vanessa was ready. It shows a pattern, Your Honor. A pattern of neglect, deception, and lack of accountability. The plaintiff is vying for control of a property where a child currently resides. The same plaintiff who failed to maintain a safe environment for a child tenant elsewhere. This is directly relevant to the question of responsible ownership. The judge paused. Sustained. Continue. Adam's face turned the color of wet clay. Then Vanessa played her final card. She approached the bench and handed over the sealed envelope. Your Honor, this is Exhibit D. A recently discovered application for a government grant submitted by Adam Bennett, declaring the Maple Avenue property as a rental unit, despite having no legal claim to it and no record of any rental activity. We believe this constitutes misrepresentation and potentially fraud. The courtroom went still. The judge opened the envelope. Read. Then looked up slowly. Mr. Bennett, would you care to respond to this claim? Adam stood, visibly sweating. That document was an early proposal. Nothing came of it. I never followed through. Vanessa struck. The funds were dispersed, Your Honor. We have records of the deposit, and we've confirmed that the grant terms required ownership of the property. This is not an early proposal. This is an executed document, signed, processed, and paid. Adam's lawyer tried to interject, but the judge raised a hand. I'll decide what's admissible. She looked back at the paper. I assume, Ms. Jefferson, this document has also been sent to the appropriate federal authorities? Vanessa didn't blink. Yes, Your Honor. As a matter of civic duty. And just like that, Adam Bennett's entire facade cracked. He slumped in his seat, eyes darting between his parents, his attorney, and the floor. My mother closed her eyes. My father looked at his hands. Then the judge turned to me. Mr. Bennett, would you like to say anything before we conclude today's hearing? I stood slowly. I hadn't planned to speak, but something inside me knew I needed to. I didn't give a speech. I didn't lash out. I just said this. I didn't ask for this fight. I never wanted to take my family to court. I spent 12 years in that house raising my son, fixing what broke, and building a life after mine fell apart. I thought that mattered. I still do. All I want is to keep a roof over my child's head, a roof I've earned, brick by brick. And I hope, someday, we can all find peace. But not at the cost of being trampled. The judge nodded. She turned her chair slightly, writing something down. Then she said the words I'll never forget. This court will reconvene in 48 hours for the formal ruling. But in light of the new evidence presented today, I am issuing a temporary injunction prohibiting any change of ownership, construction, or legal filings related to the property at 417 West Maple Avenue. Adam's lawyer stood. Your Honor, I must protest. Sit down, counselor, she said, without looking up. And just like that, Adam's plan collapsed. The revenge wasn't flashy. It wasn't loud. It was methodical, measured, and completely devastating. He left the courtroom that day without speaking to anyone, not our parents, not his lawyer, not even the press that had started to sniff around outside. Keisha shook my hand on the way out and said, he deserved that. I just nodded, but I wasn't smiling yet, because the final verdict was still to come, and I had one last card left to play. The final day of court felt like the eye of a storm. Calm, but only because every piece had already been thrown into the wind. I sat there in my old suit, hands folded, watching Adam squirm in his tailored one. His usual confidence was gone, the smirk replaced by silence. His lawyer barely looked at him. And for the first time, my parents weren't sitting behind him. They were behind me. My dad, stone-faced. My mom, pale and quiet, twisting a tissue in her hands. Rachel sat with them, arms crossed, her chin high. Judge Warren entered briskly and wasted no time. This court has reviewed all evidence, testimony, and documentation related to the dispute over 417 West Maple Avenue. We will now proceed with a final ruling. I didn't breathe. In matters of property, the law prioritizes ownership, contractual obligations, and intent. While it is true that the deed to the Maple Avenue property remains in the name of Ronald and Diane Bennett, the court recognizes that over the past 12 years, the defendant, Michael Bennett, has demonstrated continuous, exclusive use and maintenance of the residence. The plaintiffs provided no lease, no documentation requesting rent, and no communication suggesting that the defendant's occupancy was intended to be temporary. Adam stiffened. I saw his jaw clench. Furthermore, the judge continued, this court finds the actions of Adam Bennett to be not only misleading but potentially criminal. Submitting fraudulent information on a government loan application, misrepresenting property ownership, and interfering with lawful occupancy constitute serious violations. This evidence, though outside the immediate scope of this property dispute, casts doubt on Mr. Adam Bennett's credibility and character. She paused, looked over her glasses. Accordingly, the court grants the defendant, Michael Bennett, equitable interest in the property and rules in favor of initiating a transfer of title under the doctrine of constructive trust. This effectively grants Mr. Bennett legal ownership of 417 West Maple Avenue. My heart dropped, then soared. It was done. I had won. I closed my eyes and took the deepest breath I'd taken in months. My lawyer put a hand on my arm and whispered, you did it. But the judge wasn't finished. In addition, she said, the court strongly recommends that Ronald and Diane Bennett seek independent legal counsel regarding their financial entanglements with Adam Bennett. Based on the exhibits provided, including Exhibit D, the court has submitted a recommendation to federal authorities to open an investigation into the use of pandemic relief funds by Adam Bennett and his business entities. Gasps. From the gallery. From my parents. Even from the court clerk. Adam stood suddenly. That's not even. The judge cut him off. Mr. Bennett, I suggest you remain silent. Anything you say can now be subject to criminal investigation. His lawyer grabbed his sleeve and pulled him back into his seat. The gavel came down. It was over. Afterward, people shuffled out quietly. Some whispered. Some stared. I stayed seated, letting the noise fade around me. Vanessa leaned down and said, there will be paperwork. We'll file the title transfer immediately. But today it's yours. She was right. The house was mine. Legally. Permanently. And the truth? It didn't feel like victory. Not exactly. It felt like relief. Adam stormed out without a word. Didn't even look back. Not at me. Not at our parents. Not at anyone. His future, whatever it looked like now, was no longer my concern. But my parents lingered. I turned slowly as they approached. My mom's eyes were red. My dad's shoulders sagged. They looked smaller somehow, like the roles had reversed. We didn't see it, my mom whispered. We didn't want to believe he'd do that. I nodded. You believed in him. I get it. My dad cleared his throat. You saved the house. You saved us, too, even if we didn't deserve it. There was nothing to say to that. Not yet. Maybe one day. Rachel stepped forward, fierce and loyal as ever, and gave me a hug so tight I thought my ribs would crack. Proud of you, kid, she said. Proud of you for not stooping to his level. Josh wasn't in the courtroom, but when I picked him up that afternoon, he ran out of Rachel's house holding something behind his back. Close your eyes, he shouted. I laughed and obeyed. When I opened them, he was holding a crayon drawing of our house, crooked and messy, but perfect in every way. On the lawn were two stick figures, him and me. He'd drawn a banner over the front door. It said, "We live here forever." I knelt down and hugged him tight. And for the first time in a long, long time, I felt home.